Hello, DirtFish rally friends. It's the rally that we've all been waiting for, that we've all been looking forward to. It's the return of the Safari Rally Kenya. Would you believe it's 19 years since the WRC visited Africa? It's been a long, long wait, David. But my goodness me, we've already had shakedown. We've already been treated to what Africa can offer the World Rally Championship. It really is the most exciting rally I can remember for a long, long time.
They're all exciting, aren't they?
Let's
Let's be honest. But I think it's going to be worth the wait. Although 19 years is quite a long time, isn't it?
It's a long time. It's a long time.
But no, you're absolutely right. Shakedown already. You know, it's given us incredible vistas, tremendous landscapes, some drama with Oliver Solberg as well. Yeah, we can't wait, can we?
We really can't. And by the way, folks, we are not, as you might be able to tell, in Kenya, sadly. We do have our man on the ground, George Donaldson, and we'll be hearing from George very, very shortly. But how good is it to be here? And we have to thank Malcolm.
You haven't told them where we are yet.
We're at M-Sport.
We're not in Kenya, we're in Cumbria.
Cumbria.
Yeah.
You know, zebras, elephants, giraffes. Not many, but we've got a safari winning car.
We've got some fever here, haven't we?
We do have proper fever
let's
here,
be
folks.
honest.
So, David, I was saying, you know, it is the most hotly anticipated rally I can remember for a very long time. Really, I think because there is so much of the unknown about this, even although we have some tremendous history.
Oh, absolutely. But also, Cole, you shouldn't forget that, you know, we all got completely geared up for it, didn't we, last year?
Yes.
And it was, unfortunately, because of coronavirus, it was postponed for another year. But, you know, we're all ready for it last year. But now it's stalled for 12 months, but it's here. And it is, you know, I think you're dead right. It is a complete step into the unknown. We've seen rallies come along before. Croatia earlier this year, you know, first time on the calendar. And, you know, nobody's really got notes for that. So the recce was all new, just like it's all new in Safari this week. The difference is in Croatia, the teams could all go and test there. They all knew, almost regardless of the weather, they knew what they were going to get. They knew which tyre would work on the first loop, the second. They knew pretty much everything about the event. Safari, they knew nothing. Absolutely nothing, because obviously current regulations prohibit testing outside of Europe, so none of the teams could go there. We saw teams testing in Portugal, in Spain, trying to recreate these conditions. I think when they landed into Nairobi and went up to Naivasha, they would have understood very quickly. Very quickly. There is nothing quite like Kenya, is there?
There isn't, and do you know, they've all had the videos from the organisers of the stages, so they had a little bit of an idea. But I think the reality, particularly when the drivers went out on recce, was very, very different from what they'd seen in the videos.
It was, and you know, the onboards that the organisers had supplied to the teams, the first load of onboards, were recorded quite a long time ago. So the stages had changed quite a lot. You know, a lot of the bushes had been cut back, and the nature of the road had almost altered a little bit. So they had, you know, very little idea from those onboards, and that, you know, it was really interesting to see the different way that the drivers dealt with that. You know, someone like Thierry or Gus Greensmith, they really, you know, these guys live on their onboards, don't they? They go on to, you know, years back and watch every stage as often as they can. Here, they couldn't do that. They simply had no ability. You know, there's no, of course, there were onboards back in 2002, but the stages were so completely different. Absolutely. The one thing that, you know, you and I both said we were quite surprised at is they ran the Equator Rally maybe 6 weeks ago. Yeah, a bit longer. In some of exactly the same stages, a pretty similar time of the year. We were surprised that none of the teams sent somebody, you know, for example, Toyota could have sent Hannanen, if not in a World Rally car, in some sort of R5 car.
Really.
Yeah, just to gain some experience.
Tell you what though, talking about experience, our man, more or less our man from Africa, George Donaldson, who's got more experience of the Safari Rally, David, than just about anyone. He is out there helping us out at DirtFish this weekend, and George, David, and DirtFish friends, has been out to have a look at the stages. Let's hear from our man on the ground, George Donaldson.
Stage 2 of the rally, effectively the first competitive stage. Now the road coming up here is a tortuous little road with pavé stones on it. You could be in old Italy or Portugal almost with the design of it. It's designed as part of the national park. I've got a whole load of marshals behind me. Is that correct, guys? We're actually in the national park. There could be lions here. Leopards. Oh, crikey. Okay, I'm glad you're here and I'm not standing out here moaning. Fine volcanic dust. Hard volcanic stone. This is obsidian rock. I hope that comes out in focus there. It's not rock, it's glass. It's glass. And it's partly made up. There are areas of the stage in here which are basically pure this, I'm told.
There you go.
There you are, glass. It broke into glass. Let's have a look. Wow, look at that. Can we see? It is just shiny and, oh, let's see. I've been on this for about half a kilometre and it's just hardcore dropped into the road. You can see around, it's looking a little bit marshy to either side, actually not quite on the left, but it does look marshy. Now, if we look down here on the road, let's have a look at this. There's my foot, and there's that rock. It's just sitting there. I can't move it. Here's the route. These are 200, 300 millimetre steps. I'll point down at my shoe. Look at that. It can be a foot deep. It's not a foot deep here. There are a couple of potholes. I'm not going to go and stand in them, but look at that. Just driven the 17, 18 kilometres of this incredible stage. Like no safari rally I have ever seen, but what a classic safari event all the same. Looking back over the veldt here, we've got ostrich out there, zebra, wildebeest. So look, that stage, unbelievably testing. The drivers are going to be exhausted at the end of these stages. I know they're only 18 kilometres, but that's going to feel like a lot more. Some high-speed sections, very exciting high-speed sections because they're fast and nadgery and there's hazards and bumps and places where there's just a little kink. Do you take it flat? Do you take a little cut? It's all there. It's all there to be done. I am distracted by the wildlife around here. I really want to just look at it.
Wow. Wow. That's just incredible. There is such a variety, David, of stages there. Finland fast in places, first gear slow, picking your way through. What did George call them? I think he called them the rock gardens in places. How do you prepare for that as a driver?
Clearly you're not a mountain biker, are you, Colin? Rock garden is a very common part of downhill these days. Everybody, we all know about rock gardens.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Some of us take them quicker than others. Some of them get off and walk through them, obviously.
Right.
But no, I mean, Kadong, I think, is second stage on Friday. Quicker than Finland. You know, I was talking to Petter Solberg before the event, and I was saying to Petter, you know, what are you talking to Oliver about? How are you kind of imparting experience? And he said there is so much different. He said from watching the onboard, from the organisers, he said some of the straights are so long that you'll be back to almost looking on the trip, counting down as a driver to see, because the junctions, and this is another really interesting part of this rally, a lot of the junctions are really hidden, you know, just behind trees and in the middle of a long bush. You know, the junctions will just come out of nowhere. It's not obvious.
It really is difficult.
And you know, Elvin was saying it's really hard to read the road.
But you know what's really interesting? I said to George has been out there for some time, and he's been sending lots and lots and lots of videos.
It feels like George has been out there about 20 years.
Well, it does.
Probably since the last one.
He sent 20 years worth of videos, that's for sure. But I said to him, George, you know, there are some massive opportunities to cut out there from what I've seen. And he went, no. He said, absolutely, there'll be no cutting, Colin. Because what you don't see in the videos is that off the line, there are massive boulders in amongst the grass because it's all volcanic, and there are volcanic boulders hidden everywhere. And it might be tempting. You can see the line in places, and the road goes round and round and round. You think, well, the straightest line is straight across there. You would be a silly man to take that.
But again, this is where experience will count, and the drivers will all have stopped in those corners, got out, had a look. We were talking about this, weren't we, in Sardinia? And you were saying, you know, would they really still stop? I'm sure they would.
And see how far in they can go.
But I do remember I did the recce I've done the recce on a few WRC rounds, and a lot of the time you'd see the drivers wouldn't bother to stop and get out. They'd just chuck the recce car in and see if it came out the other side. So no, it is going to be a huge challenge, and you are dead right. But there will be some sections that you can cut.
For sure, and there's time to be made up there. But do you know what? I don't think the odd second is going to be what really decides this rally. Let's talk, David, about Hyundai first, because we overlooked when we went to Sardinia the fragilities that appeared in the Hyundai in Portugal. Now, what can we read into shakedown? Oliver Solberg, broken suspension. We've not heard an awful lot about
suspension
that.
or steering. We don't know. So I mean, the wheel looked like it had opened.
So it could be steering, couldn't
Yeah.
it? Well, not something is broken anyway
Yeah.
on that car. On what didn't look like a massive hit. It's difficult to tell, really difficult to tell. But I suspect it could be a difficult weekend again for them.
It's certainly not going to be an easy weekend, is it? When you look at the issues that they had in Portugal and Sardinia. Again, it's difficult because team principal Andrea Adamo won't talk about the technical issues. People are speculating now, have they changed the spec of damper? Is it a lighter damper, which is great for performance, but not so good for durability? We're speculating, we don't know. It could be a complete change of damper manufacturer. Something has changed, clearly, because the car isn't working in the same way that it was. But also, you look back all the way to 2017 when this car first came out. It was Germany, was it, where Thierry he had that rear suspension issue?
Yes.
And so, I mean, down that car's history, it has had issues with suspension. It's not been the most robust of cars. But having said that, it's had a great record on events like the rough rallies, Turkey, Sardinia. Yeah, Sardinia was.
And what we've seen in the past, particularly from Mike Tanak, is he has the ability to think his way through rallies. Remember when we went back to Turkey for the first time? It was really rough. He was in an older spec. What car was it that he won Turkey in that year? Was it Toyota? I think it was, wasn't it? He was in an older spec. He knew he couldn't win it on pace alone. He knew he had to be
ninth
clever.
or something at the end of day one.
And he showed how to manage a rough, tough rally. So that experience will be invaluable. And I think what we'll see from Hyundai this weekend is a different approach. I think it'll be very much an approach where they say, look, let's get through the stages, let's see where we are at the end of the day. We don't want to be crawling through, but we don't want to be taking any undue risks.
I can't imagine any driver that is going to take any approach other than that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Any driver that goes. This is perhaps one area where the drivers could struggle, because in events like Turkey and Sardinia, you have these rough sections, but generally the cars will stand up to it. They will get through because there's not that much rough in there. On this event, it looks like there is an awful lot of rough, and it is that mindset of having to slow the thing right down. And again, we were talking about it earlier, in the notes, Nicky Grist was saying when he was first with Colin McRae, he couldn't get Colin to slow down enough. And in the end, when he'd co-driven for Kankkunen, he'd had this word, just the word stop, literally stop. And he introduced this, and Colin was like, actually it works, because it makes something, it jumps out at you. And they will need to do that, because they will need to get the car down into first gear and then literally pick their way across the rock garden. Through the rock garden.
I know.
Yep.
It is interesting because you have that change of tempo. You have these lightning fast sections.
Yeah.
And you're getting into a rhythm, you're finding a rhythm, the car feels great, it's singing, it's dancing through the African plains. Stop!
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Yeah, bang.
But do you know, Colin, there are some drivers that can really deal with that tempo change.
Yeah.
And which other event do we see this all the time? Monte Carlo, where you go really quick. Suddenly you've got in your notes, big ice, you turn into a north-facing corner or something, and it's stop. And Sébastien Ogier is a driver that can totally deal with that.
Well, let's move on to Sébastien Ogier. Let's move on to Toyota, because for me, again, I think we've got to be looking at Toyota as the favourites for a number of reasons. Perhaps the most telling is the road position. Normally on a gravel rally, we'd say first, second on the road, as we predicted, and we're completely wrong on the last event in Sardinia. First, normally it's punishing, and you can lose a lot of time. You look at the road surface, you talk to people like George, who's been out to look at the stages, and he'll tell us, and he has told us, actually, you want to be first or second on the road because it will deteriorate so very, very quickly.
But just in the recce, we've seen tremendous ruts develop, haven't we? And those recce cars, they're on the same tyres and stuff, but nothing like the power and the torque. You get a World Rally car into these places, and they will tear sections of these roads to shreds.
Oh, do you know what? I genuinely think we're going to see this weekend cars stuck on the start line. I can see that happening further down. Those, particularly in the really soft starts where they just dig in and in and in.
Yeah.
But I think Toyota could be in a good position this weekend, David. We've seen a slight modification. You've got this wonderful car behind us with the bull bars, with the snorkel. We're not going to see that in our World Rally cars. But Toyota have modified slightly the front grille, haven't they? To try and avoid animals.
Animals and any intrusion, isn't it, really? Rocks and what have you. because that's the other thing, you know, the splitters on the front of these World Rally cars will chuck stuff up into the air intake. So yeah, they've strengthened the grille, the mesh. Quite how strong, I'm not sure. You know, would it stop a zebra's hoof going through? I'm not sure.
Who knows?
Let's hope we don't find out.
Well, let's hope we don't.
We do like zebras.
We do, and giraffes and elephants and hippopotamus. We don't, and warthogs. Lots of warthogs out there. Is that what they're called?
Baboons.
It's warthogs. That sounds a bit like, what's his name, Harry Potterish. Was that? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Was it Harry Potter?
No idea.
Let's talk then, David. We've talked about our two main teams. Let's talk about, no question, the underdogs. It's M Sport. They're there with Gus Greensmith, who's making some big strides forward this year, and the very exciting Adrian Formeau. This is the sort of rally that if you're going to get an unexpected result, it's this one, isn't it?
Absolutely, and we've seen it. We've seen it through the years. You know, just coming along with that sensible approach and delivering a great result. It's difficult though, isn't it? Because usually you have a driver, a more experienced driver is able to turn in those sort of performances. It's quite a big ask of Gus and Adrian to just slow it down and just drive through. Again, talking to Malcolm earlier, you know, we've seen Oliver Solberg's issue, which he had at Shakedown and had the problem with the wheel. It's incredible that Malcolm was relaying a tale from 1999 when Petter was essentially dropped in at the last minute when Thomas Rådström was injured. And on Shakedown there, Petter hit a rock and he broke a cross member on the car.
Right?
Yeah.
That was off the
It was.
Oh, sorry about that.
So Malcolm had sent.
That's just ping our directors to your phones. Holidays.
Malcolm had sent Petter a text and saying, "I wonder if Oliver's going to get a similar roasting from Andrea Adamo to the one that I gave you back in '99." So yeah, there's lots of similarities, but you know, Petter was able then to understand. You know, Fred Gallagher, his co-driver, went to Malcolm and said, "We have to slow him down. Right. He's coming here to drive a European rally, you know, a sprint style event. You need to tell me I can shout at him and I can tell him." And Malcolm said, "Absolutely, you crack on." And Petter, you know, he talks a lot about the influence that Fred and Fred's experience, he was then a 3 or 4 time Safari winner, understood what it meant to bring the car to the finish and how to drive these roads. Right. And there is a very different style.
Completely alien to these youngsters.
100%.
Alien to all of our drivers. There isn't a driver in the field, in the WRC field, that really has any reference to what they've got to do.
And no
this weekend.
co-driver. You know, we wondered about Dan Barrett. No, he hasn't been here. He wasn't here in 02.
Wow.
So no, it's a complete adventure.
It is an adventure. It's absolutely. Listen, folks, what we have this weekend ahead of us then, 18 stages. Starts with a super special to the northeast of Nairobi, David, am I right in saying that? Which starts Thursday lunchtime. We then have 3 proper days. We have 6 stages on Friday, 6 stages on Saturday, 5 stages on Sunday. Now, before we leave you folks, and don't forget we are here all weekend at M Sport and we'll be bringing you regular updates. You told me something, because you've written down all these notes and there's some wonderful, wonderful stories here. You told me something which I just don't believe. I genuinely don't believe that you're correct in this, but tell me the story just once more.
The Audi story.
Just astonishing.
At some point through this weekend, I've written lots of colour-coded notes here, all about the history that we'll get around to. The Audi story is quite extraordinary. So, in the olden days, when this event ran to the minute, there was no service time. So essentially, the cars were serviced wherever they wanted to be. And if the car broke down, if you took a wheel off, the helicopter would land, fix it, and away you'd go. And you just had to reach the next control on your minute. So Audi realised that when they had to stop to refuel the car, it was taking time. Yeah. So they looked, and they genuinely looked. I think it was it a Phantom fighter jet?
Oh,
I can't remember.
Making this up now.
No. Genuinely, they had the company that supplied the air-to-air refueling for fighter jets. They had them investigate the potential for fitting that similar system to the Audi. It was 85, so it was the Sport Quattro, and it would have been fueled from a helicopter. The heli had a fuel bowser. And they got all the way down the road and then discovered that actually trying to keep a rally car going across a bumpy road at the same speed as a heli flying through the air was impossible. So they canned it. But genuinely, they investigated air-to-ground refueling.
Oh, listen, folks, if anyone's got any photographs of this, if it was ever tested, if it was ever even just a sketch of how it looks, send it to us. That's a fabulous story. Many more stories from David over the course of the weekend. Many, many more. Folks, as I say, we're at M Sport all weekend. Myself, David, we will be joined by Malcolm Wilson, by Matthew Wilson, by Richard Milner.
And a very special guest on Friday and Saturday, hopefully.
Who's that?
Well, we can't tell people, can we?
Right.
We're going to keep it secret.
Well,
You've forgotten already.
Told me. You haven't even told me.
No. It's well worth tuning in for.
I can't wait, folks. So we are here all weekend, bringing you all the news, all the action, all the drama, and there will be lots of drama at the Safari. What are we calling it, David?
Safari Rally Kenya.
Safari Rally
Will
Kenya.
you please learn your rally names?
Yes, I got to. I'm not doing well with the names, folks. Thank you for joining us for our preview. We'll see you all during the course of the weekend.